Imagine walking into a luxury diner where a humble black waitress quietly goes about her job. Then, out of nowhere, she answers a phone call in fluent Chinese. The entire room freezes. A group of arrogant millionaires, who moments earlier dismissed her as just a help, suddenly look at each other in disbelief. Who is this woman really? And why did her voice shake the walls of their pride? The place was a high-end downtown restaurant. Polished marble floors, dim golden lights, and the scent of money floating in the air. On that evening, a group of wealthy businessmen had taken over the corner booth. Loud laughter, expensive cigars, and dismissive glances toward the staff. It was clear they thought the world belonged to them. Among the staff was Maya, a black waitress in her late 20s. She wore her uniform neatly, her hair tied back, her posture straight. To the millionaires, she was invisible, just another server whose purpose was to refill their glasses and carry their plates. One man in particular, Mr. Aldridge, the wealthiest among them, sneered every time Maya approached. "Careful with that wine, sweetheart. It costs more than your monthly paycheck," he said with a smirk, making his friends chuckle. Maya didn't flinch. She had learned long ago that arrogance often came dressed in designer suits. Still, something about their tone cut deep, not because of what they said, but because they assumed she was nothing more than what they saw. And then it happened as Maya cleared the plates. Her phone buzzed in her apron. Normally, she never answered while on shift, but the name flashing on the screen made her chest tighten. It was an urgent international call. With trembling hands, she whispered, "Excuse me one moment," and stepped just a few feet away. When she answered, her voice switched. Smooth, confident, fluent Mandarin Chinese. The words rolled off her tongue like music. The millionaires stopped mid-laugh. Forks froze in midair. Even Aldridge nearly spilled his wine as he turned to watch. "Wait a second. Did she just—" one of the men muttered. "Chinese. She's speaking Chinese," another whispered, eyes wide. The arrogance in the booth evaporated into stunned silence. For the first time that night, Maya wasn't invisible. But little did they know, this was only the beginning. The diner's atmosphere had changed. What was once filled with the obnoxious laughter of millionaires now hung heavy with silence. The arrogant men who mocked Maya a few minutes ago sat frozen, their eyes darting toward her as if they had just discovered she was someone far beyond their reach. But Maya, she didn't even notice their stares. She calmly ended her Mandarin conversation with a soft, "Xie wa hen kueo hanili out yin." "Thank you. I'm glad we could talk." Her phone slid back into her apron pocket, and she exhaled like nothing unusual had happened. Yet, in that brief moment, the ground beneath the millionaires' egos had shifted. Mr. Aldridge leaned back in his leather seat, squinting at Maya as though she were a puzzle he couldn't solve. He had made a career out of sniffing out weaknesses in people, but right now, all he could sense was mystery. "She's just a waitress," muttered one of his companions, trying to shake off the discomfort. "Waitresses don't speak Mandarin like that." Aldridge snapped. His voice was low but sharp. That wasn't tourist-level Chinese, that was fluent. They watched as Maya returned to their table with poise, setting down a new round of wine glasses. Her movements were graceful, precise, almost professional in a way that didn't fit their assumptions of her. Aldridge smirked again, tried to regain control of the situation. "So, what was that, sweetheart?" "Practicing for a karaoke night in Chinatown." His words dripped with mockery, desperate to bring back the laughter. Maya didn't take the bait. Instead, she gave a faint smile and replied calmly, "No, sir. That was a business call." The table erupted in muffled snickers, except Aldridge, whose eyes narrowed at her tone. Something about the confidence in her answer bothered him. "Business call? What kind of waitress gets international business calls in flawless Mandarin?" The men whispered among themselves as Maya walked away. "Do you think she's—" "Nah, come on. If she was important, she wouldn't be waiting tables." "But what if she is?" The seeds of doubt had been planted. Maya leaned against the wall for a brief second, steadying her breath. That call wasn't just random, it was urgent. A corporate matter, one she was supposed to have left behind years ago. She had promised herself she'd live quietly now, away from the spotlight, away from power struggles. But life had a way of pulling her back in. She touched the phone in her apron, remembering the voice on the other end. "We need you back. The deal can't move forward without you." Her chest tightened. She wasn't ready. Not yet. Back at the table, Aldridge's curiosity burned brighter. He wasn't the type of man who could let go of unanswered questions, especially when his pride had been bruised in public. When Maya returned to refill their glasses, he leaned closer. "You know, most of my associates in Beijing would kill for someone who could speak like you. Funny thing, though, what's a talented woman like you doing here, serving drinks?" His friends chuckled again, but this time it sounded forced, like they were laughing to cover up their unease. Maya tilted her head slightly, her eyes calm but sharp. "Maybe, sir," she said softly. "I just like watching powerful men underestimate me." The table fell silent. Aldridge's smirk faltered. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he wasn't the one in control. As the millionaires left, their arrogance was replaced by suspicion. Aldridge stopped at the door, turning back to glance at Maya one last time. She was cleaning a table, humming faintly, completely unbothered. But in his mind, questions screamed louder than the city outside. Who was she? Why Mandarin? And why did her voice sound like someone who belonged in boardrooms, not diners? One thing was certain. He wouldn't rest until he found out. The diner had never been this quiet. Forks hovered in midair. Conversations cut off. Even the soft music from the jukebox seemed distant. The only sound was the faint hum of the waitress's phone as she calmly ended her call in flawless Mandarin. She slid the phone into her apron pocket, adjusted the notepad in her hand, and looked at the stunned millionaire as if nothing unusual had happened. "Now," she asked gently, her tone polite but firm, "was that the tea you wanted refilled? Or did you need something stronger?" The question, so ordinary, felt like a slap to the millionaire's ego. His face flushed a deep red. You speak Chinese?" he stammered. The waitress tilted her head, almost amused. "Yes, and a few other languages, if the situation calls for it." A ripple of murmurs passed through the diner. People exchanged glances, some smiling, others shaking their heads at the millionaire's earlier arrogance. The gang of men who had been sitting with him looked around nervously. The script they had rehearsed, the mockery, the superiority, the smug laughter, was unraveling right before their eyes. One of them whispered, "Man, she sounded like a native." The waitress, however, didn't gloat. She simply jotted something in her notebook and took another table's order, leaving the millionaire suspended in his own humiliation. But he couldn't let it go. "Wait!" His voice cracked louder than he intended. "How does a waitress, someone like you, speak Chinese?" "Who taught you?" The diner went even quieter, as if every soul present leaned forward to catch her answer. She turned slowly, her calmness unshaken. "I wasn't always just a waitress." Her eyes glimmered with a history untold. "And maybe it's not me you should be questioning, but yourself." The words hit harder than any insult. The millionaire's mind spun. He was a man used to control. Money gave him power. Status gave him influence. But here, in this ordinary diner, his power had evaporated, and all eyes judged him, not her. Memories clawed at him. His failed business ventures, the way he used wealth to mask insecurity, the countless times he mocked others to feel bigger. And now this woman, this waitress, had dismantled his pride in seconds. But instead of retreating, he leaned on arrogance. "You think speaking another language makes you special?" he sneered, forcing a laugh that rang hollow. "You're still serving tables. What good is all that knowledge if this," he gestured at her apron, "is where you ended up?" Gasps spread across the diner. A father at the corner booth shook his head in disapproval. A young boy whispered to his mother, "Why is he being so mean?" The waitress didn't flinch. She set down a plate of pancakes in front of a customer, wiped her hands on her apron, and finally walked back to the millionaire's table. Her eyes, deep and unyielding, locked onto his. "You think this job defines me?" she asked softly, but her words carried the weight of thunder. What defines a person is what they've overcome and what they choose to be. In the corner, an elderly couple exchanged knowing looks. The old man leaned toward the millionaire's group and muttered, "Boy, you don't know who you're talking to." The gang members froze. One of them, younger than the rest, asked hesitantly, "Wait, do you know her?" The old man nodded slowly. "Everyone in this town does. She's not just some waitress. She's a survivor, a fighter." The millionaire's smirk faltered. He looked around, realizing the room wasn't with him anymore. The tide had turned, but he forced a scoff. "Survivor? Fighter? What does that even mean? You're all making her sound like some kind of hero." The waitress finally spoke again, her tone calm but edged with steel. "You'll understand soon enough." The diner buzzed with unspoken energy. Customers leaned forward, caught between disbelief and admiration. The millionaire, trapped in his own pride, couldn't back down. "Fine," he challenged, his voice shaky but defiant. "If you're so great, prove it. Tell us who you really are." The waitress smiled faintly. "No, I don't need to prove anything to you." Her refusal was more powerful than any revelation. It left the millionaire scrambling, desperate to reclaim control. He banged his fist on the table, startling his companions. "You can't just—" But before he could finish, the diner door swung open. A man in a tailored suit walked in, scanning the room with sharp eyes. When he spotted the waitress, his stern expression softened into relief. "There you are," he said, walking straight toward her. "We've been looking for you." The diner erupted in whispers. The millionaire froze. Who were we? Why would someone in a suit be looking for a waitress? The man handed her an envelope. She opened it calmly, glanced at the papers inside, and tucked it away without a word. Turning back to the millionaire, she said, "Enjoy your meal. I have more important matters to attend to." The diner was frozen. Every eye followed the waitress as she slipped the envelope into her apron, as if it were nothing more than a grocery receipt. The millionaire leaned forward, confusion painted across his face. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. Who are you?" The waitress turned to him with the same calm composure she had held all along. "The better question is, why does it matter so much to you?" Her tone was soft, but the sting was undeniable. The man in the tailored suit adjusted his tie, eyeing the millionaire with visible disdain before addressing the waitress again. "Ma'am, your presence is requested immediately. The board won't move forward without you." Gasps echoed through the diner. "Board?" The word lingered in the air like smoke. The millionaire blinked rapidly, his brain tripping over itself. "Board? What board? She's a waitress." The suited man raised an eyebrow. "Is that what she told you?" The waitress gave a small smile. "No, that's what you assumed." The laughter that once filled the millionaire's voice was gone. His arrogance was cracking, piece by piece, under the weight of her truth. "You can't be serious," he muttered, half to himself. "You mean to tell me she's someone important?" The suited man didn't bother entertaining the question. "Important?" he scoffed. "She's the only reason half the companies in this state didn't collapse years ago." The diner buzzed like a hive of shocked voices. An elderly man whispered to his wife, "I knew she wasn't ordinary." The way she carried herself, like she'd seen the world. A group of teenagers at the back booth stared in awe. One whispered, "She could have been anything, and she's here serving pancakes." The millionaire's hands trembled as he gripped his glass of water. For the first time in years, he didn't feel wealthy. He felt small. Finally, the waitress sighed, setting down her notepad. She pulled the envelope back out and laid it on the millionaire's table with deliberate calmness. "You want to know who I am?" she asked. "Read it." The millionaire hesitated, then tore it open. His eyes scanned the words, his lips moving silently as he read. Then his face drained of color. The document bore her name, followed by titles that didn't belong to a simple waitress. Founder, investor, board chair. She wasn't just bilingual. She wasn't just smart. She was a force, quietly running circles around men like him. The diner fell into a hush, so deep you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. The waitress looked at him steadily. "I don't wear my success on my sleeve because I don't need to, unlike some." The words pierced him like glass. The gang that had come with the millionaire looked ready to crawl under the table. One of them finally whispered, "Boss, maybe we should go." But the millionaire shook his head, his pride still clawing for life. "No, she's lying. This has to be fake. Some trick." The suited man chuckled, pulling out his phone. "Check the news, if you like. Her name is everywhere." A teenager already had. He held up his screen. "He's right. She's on the cover of Business Weekly. Says she turned down millions to live quietly in her hometown diner." The diner erupted in murmurs again, some in admiration, others in disbelief. The millionaire slumped back, his confidence shattered. The very ground he stood on felt shaky. She leaned closer, her voice low, but the whole diner seemed to hear her anyway. "You came here today to mock me, to feel superior." But the truth, her eyes burned into his. "It isn't my job that defines me, it's my character. And your money doesn't make you strong. It just makes you loud." The words hung in the air like a verdict. The millionaire opened his mouth, but no words came. His lips quivered, his eyes darted around at the crowd, all watching, all judging. For the first time in his life, silence was louder than wealth, and the waitress, standing tall in her simple apron, had become untouchable. The diner was still silent, the millionaire's face pale as stone, his arrogance, his laughter, his mockery, all stripped away. He sat there not as a powerful man, but as a fool exposed. The waitress, no, the woman of power he had underestimated, looked down at him, her presence commanding the entire room. "You see," she said softly, "respect costs nothing, yet it's the one thing money can't buy. You had every chance to show kindness, but you chose cruelty, and cruelty always collects its debt." The millionaire's hands shook on the table. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. I didn't know." She raised an eyebrow. "You didn't care to know." Gasps fluttered across the diner. Every customer, every bystander felt the weight of those words. The suited man, still standing tall, placed a firm hand on the millionaire's shoulder. "Sir, I think it's time you left. This establishment doesn't welcome your kind of arrogance." The millionaire tried to protest, but the room had turned against him. Even the friends he arrived with slipped out one by one, abandoning him in his shame. When he finally stood, his knees buckled slightly. His once confident stride was gone. He looked smaller, weaker, swallowed by the shadows of his own disgrace. As he stumbled toward the door, whispers followed him. Sharp, cutting whispers he could never escape. "That's the man who mocked her. Money doesn't make you better. He'll never live this down." Once the door slammed shut, the diner erupted in applause, not for the millionaire, but for the woman who had stood tall in the face of cruelty. The waitress smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened with unspoken strength. She bowed her head slightly to the crowd, then returned to her station as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But everyone there knew they had witnessed something unforgettable. Outside, the millionaire sat alone in his luxury car. The leather seats, the polished dashboard, the glittering watch on his wrist. Suddenly, all of it felt meaningless. For the first time in his life, he realized money couldn't protect him from humiliation. Money couldn't erase shame. And money couldn't buy him the respect he so desperately craved. His reflection in the rear-view mirror wasn't that of a powerful man. It was of a broken one. The moral, final words. Back inside the diner, the waitress poured herself a quiet cup of coffee. The camera lingered on her calm smile, her dignity shining brighter than any diamond. Her strength was not in wealth, not in titles, not even the power she secretly held. Her strength was in humility. And the millionaire? His punishment wasn't prison or violence or even public scandal. His punishment was far worse. Living forever with the memory of the day a simple waitress revealed just how small he truly was. Justice without raising her voice. Power without lifting her hand. Victory without a single punch thrown. Fade out.